Nathaniel Sports Central will be giving you guys our Week 2 college football rankings for this 2024 college football season. The first week of the season is wrapped up, and so we'll be re-ranking the teams here today as we look forward to Week 2. So with that, let's get started with 1 through 7. Pretty easy to put Georgia number 1 after last week. They beat Clemson 34-3. And Clemson is still a good team too. I feel like they're going to be better this season, and they can still win the ACC for sure. I wouldn't be surprised, but Georgia just showed why they are the national favorite this season. They're, I would say, the strongest team in the country on both sides, and they blew out a talented Clemson team there in Week 1. And then you got Ohio State number 2, beat Akron 52-6. Kind of a close game there at first. It was a bit of a slow start for the Buckeyes, but they found their stride in that one, scored 52, and a dominant win for the Buckeyes there. And then you got Texas at 3. They beat Colorado State 52-0. Texas is legit this season. I wouldn't be surprised if they won it all. And based on what we saw in Week 1, it's obviously just so early on, but there's a lot of really good teams in the country this season. We saw Texas blow out Colorado State 52-0, Ole Miss over Furman 76-0, Alabama over Western Kentucky 63-0. So, some really dominant performances for a lot of teams. And, we had Oregon at 3 last week. That's just something you're going to see this week, even though, it was just a FCS Week 1 game that Oregon played against Idaho, and they only won it by 10 points. And because of that, Oregon's going to slip, I would assume, in the AP poll somewhat significantly. We'll see what happens when that comes out. But, you compare Oregon's performance with what we see in this top 7 from Georgia to Penn State. Oregon's performance just doesn't compare to what we saw. Like Notre Dame beat Texas A&M on the road 23-13, a ranked win at a brutal place to play there. So that was an impressive win for Notre Dame. And how about Penn State too, beating West Virginia 34-12? West Virginia is I would say a good team. They should be a dark horse contender in the Big 12. And Penn State went in there no problem and found a way. So I would say any of these top 7 teams, from Georgia to Penn State, based on the way they played in Week 1, I could see any of these teams winning the national championship this season. But obviously, it's still so early on, and we just saw these teams playing Week 1 games. So it's a long season, and obviously, if you look at who was outside of this top 7, Oregon and Michigan especially, maybe didn't have dominant performances in Week 1, but still I feel like are really strong teams. Oregon, I'm dropping them 5 positions just because, you compare Oregon's performance to what we saw in the top 7, it just doesn't compare. So I did have to drop the Ducks to 8 here, but obviously we'll see what the Ducks look like moving forward. Michigan number 9 beat Fresno State 30-10. We kind of saw that offensive struggle for Michigan, and it's obviously the Wolverines are such a different team this year. That's honestly to be expected. The defense still looked great, and I think it will be this year, but the offense, the quarterback situation is a bit of a question mark right now. But Michigan is still a team not to sleep on. I wouldn't be surprised if they still surprise some people with how good they will be this season. Missouri number 10 took care of Murray State 51-0. This is one of those background teams that could really be a big threat this season, but obviously in what is a brutal SEC, you never know. It's going to be really tough for them. But Tennessee's kind of in a similar position. Beat Chattanooga 69-3. I like Tennessee a lot this season. I feel like they're one of those teams with just tremendous upside. I feel like they've got massive potential this season, so that's going to be a fun team to watch for sure. How about Miami then? They went to Florida, went to the Swamp, beat them 41-17. Florida, I feel like they've got the most difficult schedule in the country, and it's honestly not close, but for them, they're still a somewhat talented team, I would say. So for Miami to go in there, that's a really strong first game there for the Hurricanes, and because of that, I'm moving them up 8 positions up into number 12 this week. So keep an eye on Miami moving forward. As of now, it seems like, the ACC just had a terrible Week 1. You consider Florida State, Clemson, Virginia Tech. Georgia Tech is looking halfway decent right now, and you could maybe say the same about Louisville. But Miami, as of right now, it feels like the Hurricanes are the clear number 1 team in the ACC. Utah, number 13, beat Southern Utah 49-0. Utah's a team to really keep an eye on in the Big 12. It feels like, they're maybe the Big 12 favorite this season, and we saw why that is in Week 1. Oklahoma State, number 14, beat South Dakota State 44-20. I like Oklahoma State a lot too. A really well-coached team, definitely worth keeping an eye on. 15-21, we got Oklahoma at number 15, beat Temple 51-3. Sooners a strong first game there, so we'll see what happens moving forward. Obviously, a difficult schedule ahead, but a strong start for the Sooners. USC at 16, though. This is a team that I feel like, based on what we saw in week 1, this is a team really to keep an eye on. Beat LSU 27-20. Miller Moss is a legit quarterback. This is a legit team. USC had some noise this offseason. I feel like they're a bit overlooked, though, and I feel like USC is about to have a pretty strong season coming up here. Arizona 17, beat New Mexico 61-39. I did have Arizona at 14 last week. I like the Wildcats a lot this season, but based on the way the defense looked there against New Mexico, I am dropping this team a little bit, but their offense could be one of the best in the country this season, putting 61 down there. And I mean, Fafita and McMillan in there. That's going to be a strong team this season in Arizona. Then there's LSU dropping down 2 positions after losing to USC. Still feel like LSU is a strong team, but I mean, once again, the way USC looked there, they're especially a dangerous team this season. I still feel like LSU is going to be good. But obviously kind of a disappointing start there. Kansas State 19 beat UT Martin 41-6. They're a strong team. Same with Kansas right behind them, who beat Lindenwood 48-3. K-State and Kansas in similar positions. I think the Wildcats are just slightly better, but both teams should be contenders in the Big 12 this season. I mean, the Big 12 is just a very strong team at the top. They really don't have a major standout yet. In between Utah and Oklahoma State and Arizona and Kansas State and Kansas, that's going to be a very competitive conference this season. Then there's Louisville at 21, beat Austin Peay 62-0. I mean, it's crazy how, we went into this season thinking Florida State, Miami, and Clemson as the top 3 teams in the ACC, and after week 1, it's insane. We've got Miami, Louisville, and you probably would say Georgia Tech maybe as your third. NC State's right there as well. And you can maybe say Clemson is still a top 3 team in the conference. But based off of week 1, it feels like it's Georgia Tech, Louisville, and Miami as your top 3 teams in the ACC. Then 22-25, we got Iowa at 22. The main question for the Hawks is their offense. Can their offense get it together? We know the defense is going to be strong. They beat Illinois State 40-0. I overall was impressed with Iowa this past week. I feel like this is I don't know if they're a legit contender in the Big Ten, but I wouldn't be surprised if they were in the college football playoff this season. Keep an eye on them. And then Washington at 23 beat Weber State 35-3. The Huskies, I've said it all offseason, I feel like they're a bit overlooked. They're still a pretty strong team despite being very different than where they were last season. So we'll see what happens moving forward, but I would say keep an eye on the Huskies still. And then Texas A&M at 24. Lost to Notre Dame by 10. Kind of a disappointing game there. Their offense really just couldn't get much going. But, I would still say Texas A&M is a strong team despite kind of a tough loss there. And then Georgia Tech at 25. I considered leaving Clemson in here. It's kind of a toss-up between Georgia Tech and Clemson. But you now got a 2-0 Georgia Tech team who beat Florida State in Ireland. And then Georgia State 35-12, no problem. Or you put in Clemson, who got destroyed by Georgia. I feel like Georgia Tech gets the edge here. So Yellow Jackets are in the top 25 here for week 2. Clemson at 26, Auburn around the outside as well. I would say same as Nebraska, Kentucky, and NC State. NC State wasn't very impressive this past week, so I did leave them out of the top 25 once again. But NC State's one of those teams with high potential, and based on the way we saw what happened in the ACC this past week, I would say it's honestly a very wide open conference at this current point. Same with the Big 12. Florida State dropping out from number 10, just a brutal start for them. And Florida State's a team that I'm really concerned about right now. I feel like a big question heading into the season was, had they put the brutal finish of 2023 behind them and used that in a positive way, but clearly, based on their first 2 games, they let it destroy them in a negative way. And so for Florida State, that's something that's really concerning right now. They're a talented team. They just have been completely flat in their first 2 games. So we'll see if they can figure it out. Clemson's still a strong team, dropping them out this week, though. Same with Virginia Tech. Kind of a disappointing start to the season, losing to Vanderbilt there. But with that, let me know your thoughts in the comments below on this top 25, our week 2 rankings, and I appreciate you guys watching as always. My name's Evan. This is All Sports Central. Stay tuned for more. We'll catch you on the next one.